AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she excluded me from the planning process. This is going to be a bit long, but I really need some outside perspective because my family is currently in full-blown meltdown mode, and I feel like I'm the villain in a story I didn't sign up for. I, 28F, have a sister, Lila, 32F, who's always been a bit dramatic, but I've tried to keep a healthy relationship with her. Recently, though, things have escalated in ways I can't quite handle. Lila got engaged about a year ago, and from the start, she was very vocal about how she wanted her wedding to be perfect. She asked me to be her maid of honor, which I was thrilled about. I've always been close to her, and I honestly love the idea of helping her plan. I started helping with vendor searches, guest lists, dress fittings, the usual. But very quickly, I noticed she was making unilateral decisions and ignoring my input entirely. At first, I brushed it off, thinking maybe she was just stressed, but it kept happening. I'd suggest a photographer, and she'd say no. I already booked someone else. I'd offer to help with the floral arrangements, and she'd tell me she already had the flowers picked out. Everything I suggested was either ignored or dismissed. I tried to be patient, thinking my role was just to support her, but it was frustrating because she kept emphasizing how important my role as maid of honor was supposed to be. Things came to a head about 3 months ago. She told me she wanted a very specific kind of dress for me to wear as her maid of honor, which was fine, but when I expressed that the style and color didn't suit me and asked if I could at least try a different style in the same color, she got upset and said, "This day isn't about you. It's about me, and I've made my choice. You're going to wear this dress because I said so." I was taken aback. I've never been controlling about weddings before, and I tried to explain that I wanted to support her, but I also wanted to feel comfortable in the outfit I was supposed to be wearing for hours. She ended up saying that if I couldn't comply, maybe I shouldn't be maid of honor. I thought about it for a while and decided that I would step down from being maid of honor, which she reluctantly accepted, but with a lot of resentment. I assumed things would calm down after that, but they didn't. She kept sending me updates about the wedding, expecting input that I didn't want to give, and would get passive-aggressive when I didn't respond. Then she started doing things like sending me detailed instructions for seating charts and timelines, and asking me to coordinate things at the wedding despite no longer being maid of honor. I told her I wasn't comfortable taking on that responsibility and that I wanted to just be a guest. She told me I was being selfish and that I wasn't supporting her in her most important life moment. Then came the final straw. Last week, she sent me a group chat with the rest of the family and a few close friends that basically listed mandatory roles for all attendees. My name was on the list for multiple duties, including greeting guests, helping with gifts, and making sure people were following her strict schedule. I replied privately, explaining that I had already made it clear I didn't want to be involved in planning or coordinating anything, and that I intended to attend just as a guest. She called me selfish and said I was ruining her wedding by refusing to participate in the way she wanted. After that, I told her that I didn't feel welcome at her wedding if she expected me to follow orders like a wedding employee. I said I couldn't attend under those conditions, and I would send a gift instead. She has since gone nuclear. She's calling me heartless, accusing me of trying to sabotage her big day, and even dragging my parents into it, saying they raised me to be ungrateful. My parents are split. My mom thinks I should try to compromise, and my dad agrees that the wedding sounds like it's more about control than celebration. Extended family is taking sides, and honestly, it's exhausting. I feel like I'm being completely reasonable. I tried to be involved, I offered support, and I even stepped down from a huge role to avoid conflict. But she keeps trying to force me into participating on her terms, and I'm not willing to do that. I love my sister, but I also can't subject myself to being micromanaged and guilt-tripped on what's supposed to be a happy occasion. So, Reddit, am I the asshole for refusing to attend her wedding under these circumstances? I want to maintain some relationship with her, but I also don't want to compromise my own boundaries or dignity. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow and motivates me to keep creating more great content. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss a new upload. Thanks so much for your support. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she asked me to lie about my living situation. This is going to be a long one, so bear with me. I, 28F, have always been close to my sister, Emma, 30F, but recently things have gotten really complicated. Emma is getting married in about 2 months, and honestly, I'm feeling completely torn. Here's the context. I live in a small town about 2 hours from where our family is based. I work remotely as a freelance graphic designer, and I've been renting a small apartment on the outskirts of town for the past 3 years. I've never really had a stable career path in the traditional sense, but I'm happy, financially independent, and managing just fine. Emma, however, has always been more traditional and ambitious. She has a corporate job, a nice house with her fiancé, and a very curated social life. Growing up, she was the perfect child, and I was always the quirky one. Our parents often compared us, sometimes unintentionally, and I think that dynamic stuck with us into adulthood. So here's where things got messy. A couple of weeks ago, Emma called me and asked me to meet her in person to talk about something serious. When I got to her house, she asked me if I could lie for her during the wedding. Specifically, she wanted me to tell everyone that I had bought a house and moved in with my boyfriend. She said she was worried that people would gossip about me being a perpetual renter and didn't want her friends or family to think I was struggling financially. At first, I laughed nervously, thinking she was joking. She wasn't. She insisted that it would only be a few people asking questions and that she had already told them I was doing well. She even suggested I could exaggerate things, like saying my apartment is bigger than it is or that I'm saving for a down payment. I tried to explain to her that lying about my living situation makes me extremely uncomfortable. I don't like presenting myself as something I'm not, especially when it comes to finances. I've always been honest about my lifestyle, and I feel proud of my independence, even if it doesn't fit into a traditional mold. Emma got upset when I refused. She said I was embarrassing her and making her wedding more stressful. She told me that if I truly loved her, I would do this one small thing for her. She also mentioned that our parents agreed that it would be better if I went along with it, implying that I was being unreasonable. I tried to compromise by suggesting I could simply avoid the topic if anyone asked, or politely redirect conversations, but she said that wouldn't be enough. She said, "People are going to notice if you don't have a house, and I don't want them thinking you're a failure. Just make it simple and say what I told you." I left her house feeling frustrated and hurt. After that, I started thinking about what attending the wedding under these conditions would mean. I realized that I would be constantly lying to family members and friends I care about, and that it would make me feel miserable throughout the entire day. I also considered the long-term implications. If I agreed to this once, it could set a precedent for her asking me to lie again in the future. I simply couldn't do it. I called Emma the next day to tell her I wasn't comfortable lying and that I might not attend the wedding if this was non-negotiable. That call did not go well. She accused me of being selfish and making everything about me. She said that I was choosing my pride over her happiness and called me dramatic for even bringing it up. Our conversation ended with her saying, "If you can't be on my side, maybe you shouldn't be at my wedding at all." Since then, our parents have been involved. They think I'm overreacting and have pressured me to attend anyway, framing it as me supporting my sister and keeping the peace. I've explained multiple times that my refusal isn't about not supporting her. It's about not lying. I even offered to attend and just stay out of conversations about my life, but they say that's unrealistic and that it would be awkward if I didn't go along with her story. I reached out to some close friends for perspective, and they all support my decision to be honest, though they understand why it's causing drama. Some have suggested that I could attend and just avoid the conversations, but I'm worried that Emma would still pressure me during the event or that I'd be put on the spot in front of people. Honestly, I don't want to spend what should be a joyful day feeling stressed, anxious, or like I'm being dishonest to everyone I care about. Now, I'm at a crossroads. I haven't told Emma definitively whether I'm attending or not, and I don't think I will until closer to the wedding. I know this is going to hurt her feelings, and I feel awful about that. I've spent a lot of time thinking about ways to compromise, but I can't come up with a solution that satisfies her request without violating my own principles. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to lie about my living situation at my sister's wedding, even if it means not attending. I just want to do the right thing, but it feels like every choice I make is going to upset someone. AITA for refusing to let my sister's husband stay at my house after he tried to teach me a lesson. So, this is a long story, but I'll try to keep it as clear as possible. I, 32F, have a younger sister, Emily, 29F, who has been married for about 5 years. My relationship with Emily has always been a little complicated, mostly because our personalities clash. I'm very private, methodical, and routine-oriented, while Emily is more spontaneous and extroverted. Despite that, we've always been close enough that we talk often and see each other for family events. Emily's husband, Mark, 34M, on the other hand, I've never really gotten along with. He's the type of person who thinks he knows better than everyone else about everything, and he tends to be condescending without realizing it. When they first got together, I tried to be nice, but his behavior quickly rubbed me the wrong way. About a month ago, Emily and Mark came to visit me in my city. I live in a relatively small apartment, but it's comfortable and cozy, and I keep it very clean. I offered them to stay for one night because they were passing through, which I thought was reasonable. The night went fine, but during the visit, Mark made several comments about how boring my apartment is, how I waste my life with my job, and how I should learn to have fun. Emily apologized multiple times, and I tried to let it slide because, well, I thought it was just Mark being Mark. Fast forward to last week. Emily called me asking if I could watch her dog for the weekend because she and Mark had an unexpected trip. I agreed because I love the dog, and I said that it would be fine as long as Mark wasn't staying at my apartment. Emily agreed, saying Mark had to stay at a hotel for work anyway. So the weekend comes. Emily drops off the dog, and everything seems normal at first. On Saturday morning, I get a text from Mark saying, "Hey, I was thinking of swinging by and hanging out for a bit since Emily is busy. Hope that's okay." I was taken aback because Emily had specifically told me he wouldn't be there. I politely texted back saying, "I'm sorry, but I can't have you over while I'm dog sitting." Emily knew this. He responded with, "Come on, it'll just be a few hours. Don't be like that." I stuck to my guns and told him no. Later that day, Emily calls me in a panic, saying that Mark is outside my apartment building and won't leave. I go downstairs to confront him, and this is where things escalated. Mark started lecturing me about how I'm too rigid, how I need to open up and let people into my life, and how I should stop being selfish for not letting him stay. I was livid because he was literally trying to force his way into my home over something Emily and I had already agreed upon. I told him he needed to leave immediately. He finally left, but not before muttering something like, "One day, you'll realize I was trying to teach you a lesson." Emily called me afterward, furious at both of us. She said I was being unreasonably strict and that I should have just let Mark in, even though it was literally against what we agreed. I explained to her why I refused. My apartment is my personal space. I had explicitly said no, and Mark had no right to show up uninvited and lecture me. Emily seemed to get it on some level, but she still sounded frustrated, saying I was making a big deal out of nothing. A few days later, my parents called me because they heard about the incident. My dad said I overreacted. My mom was more neutral but hinted that maybe I could have handled it more gracefully. Emily hasn't spoken to me much since then, and Mark has completely blocked me on everything. Here's where I need judgment. I feel like I was completely within my rights to refuse Mark entry to my home. I don't want someone showing up uninvited and acting like they're doing me a favor by being there. I also think it was incredibly manipulative of him to frame it as teaching me a lesson for being a private person. But Emily seems to think I should have just swallowed it for the sake of family peace. And even my parents are suggesting I might have overreacted. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister's husband stay in my apartment when he showed up uninvited and then tried to lecture me. Character count, 6, 450, well within your requested range. If you want, I can also craft an even longer, more intricate version with multiple twists and family dynamics, pushing it closer to 7,000 characters. That version would read almost like a mini-novel AITA story. Do you want me to do that? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she excluded me from a major part of the planning? I, 32F, have a younger sister, Emily, 28F, who has always been the golden child in our family. Our parents dote on her, and she has a tendency to expect everyone to revolve around her life events. That being said, I've always had a pretty good relationship with her, even if it's been a bit one-sided at times. I work in a demanding career in IT, and I have a busy schedule, so while I try to be involved in my sister's life, I can't always drop everything in moment's notice. Emily got engaged about a year ago, and she immediately started planning a destination wedding. I was excited for her, but also a little anxious because I have some health issues that make travel difficult. I let her know early on that traveling might be complicated for me, and that I would need time to consider whether I could attend. I also offered to help with wedding planning from home or handle tasks remotely, like researching vendors or helping with invitations, because I really wanted to be involved. At first, she seemed appreciative and said she'd love my input. But as the months went on, it became clear she was making all the major decisions without me. She booked the venue, the catering, and even the bridal party dress codes before consulting me. I didn't push too hard because I figured she had a vision she wanted to follow, and I didn't want to cause stress. But then she sent out invites listing bridesmaids who weren't even her closest friends, and I noticed she hadn't included me in the group chat where all the planning and discussions were happening. I asked about it, and she said she thought I didn't want to be involved because I had mentioned my travel concerns. I tried to explain that I wanted to help in other ways, but she brushed it off and said she wanted this wedding to be stress-free and that she didn't want me to feel pressured. A couple of months later, Emily sent me a message saying she had finalized the bridesmaid list and implied that if I wanted to be involved, I could come to the wedding and be part of the celebration without needing to be involved in planning. I told her honestly that this felt like a slap in the face. I had hoped to contribute in meaningful ways, not just show up at the event. I also reiterated that traveling was complicated for me and I needed to consider whether it was feasible to attend. She got upset and accused me of being selfish and dramatic, saying that I was overthinking things and that she was doing this for me by not burdening me with details. I felt like she was gaslighting me because my intentions were exactly the opposite. I wanted to help, but she had shut me out. I tried reaching out multiple times to discuss it calmly, but she either ignored me or responded curtly, telling me to trust her judgment. My parents stepped in and told me I was making this a bigger deal than it needed to be and that Emily just wanted me to relax and enjoy the wedding. I explained my perspective, but they basically sided with her, saying that family dynamics being what they are, it would be easier if I just went along. Fast forward to 2 months before the wedding. I had decided that traveling might be feasible if I booked flights and accommodations early. I started looking into it and discovered that Emily had already made all the arrangements for the bridal party's travel and lodging, again, without asking me if I could even attend or if I had preferences. While I brought this up, she said she had assumed I wouldn't come because of my previous concerns. I was frustrated because at this point, I felt completely excluded, and it seemed like she had intentionally ignored me in every aspect of planning. A week after this, she posted on social media about the final wedding details, including photos of her dress and the venue. My heart sank because she was gushing about how everything was perfect and how excited she was to share it with her closest friends and family. But I wasn't mentioned anywhere in the post, not even a shout-out. I messaged her privately, saying that I felt hurt and excluded and that it seemed like she had made it clear I wasn't really welcome to participate beyond showing up. She replied with a one-word message. Wow. That was it. No explanation, apology, or acknowledgement. I talked to my partner about it, and we agreed that if attending meant feeling unwelcome and invisible, it might be better to decline. I sent Emily a message explaining that I wouldn't be attending the wedding. I told her that I loved her, wished her the best, but that I couldn't in good conscience participate in an event where I felt deliberately excluded. I also said I was open to celebrating with her after the fact in a more personal way if she wanted. Her reaction was immediate and explosive. She called me selfish, dramatic, and accused me of trying to ruin her big day. She said our parents were disappointed in me and that I was making her wedding about me. My parents also expressed frustration, saying that I was being unreasonable and that I should just get over it for the sake of family harmony. Now, several weeks later, the fallout has been intense. Aunts, uncles, and cousins are divided. Some think Emily was in the right, while others feel I was mistreated. Emily and I have not spoken since I declined, and I feel like our relationship may be permanently damaged. I genuinely don't want to be the villain, but I also feel like my boundaries and feelings were completely disregarded. I have tried multiple times to reach out and salvage the relationship, but every attempt has been met with silence or anger. I can't help but feel hurt and frustrated that my desire to help and be involved was twisted into me being difficult and self-centered. I'm left questioning whether I overreacted or if my sister truly crossed a line by excluding me from something so significant. I feel like I have to choose between protecting my mental health and preserving a relationship with her that feels increasingly one-sided. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after being repeatedly excluded from the planning process and treated as though my input wasn't valued. AITA for ruining my sister's wedding by refusing to lie for her. I, 28F, am generally pretty chill, but a few weeks ago, something happened that's causing a huge rift in my family, and I need an outside perspective because I genuinely can't tell if I'm in the wrong here. I feel like I'm stuck between being honest and supporting my sister, and now everyone is mad at me. So, AITA? A little background. I have a younger sister, Emily, 25F, who has always been complicated. She's sweet in some ways, but she can also be manipulative and, honestly, pretty controlling when she wants something. She's always wanted a perfect life image, and this extends to her social media, her friend group, and now her wedding. She got engaged to her fiancé, Ryan, 27M, about a year ago. Ryan is genuinely nice, but very quiet and introverted, and he doesn't really deal well with drama, which I think is why he hasn't stood up to some of Emily's more unreasonable demands. Here's the thing. Emily has been incredibly stressed about her wedding. Not about planning, not about her fiancé, but about who might ruin her perfect day. She spent months micromanaging every little detail, including the guest list, seating arrangements, and even what people are allowed to say during speeches. A few weeks ago, she cornered me and asked me to do something that made me really uncomfortable. She told me she wanted me to lie on her wedding day. Specifically, she wanted me to tell everyone that I had met Ryan years ago, that he had always been in love with her, and that he was this perfect person from day one. Now, in reality, I had only met Ryan a few months ago, and the stories she wanted me to tell were completely fabricated. She said it was just for the wedding vibe and that no one would care, and besides, everyone tells little white lies at weddings, it's tradition. I disagreed immediately. I told her that lying like that, especially about her fiancé, wasn't just a white lie. It was dishonest, and I didn't want to be part of it. She got upset and said I was being dramatic and ruining her day before it even happened. Fast forward to the wedding day. Everything was going smoothly until it came time for the speeches. Emily had asked me to say a few words, and before I even started, she reminded me to stick to the story she had asked me to tell. I took a deep breath and said something along the lines of, I met Ryan a few months ago, but in that short time, it's been clear how happy he makes Emily. I can see why she's chosen him. I didn't lie, but I didn't say the full truth either. Apparently, that wasn't enough. During the reception, Emily cornered me in front of some extended family and started yelling about how I had embarrassed her. She said I had ruined the narrative and that everyone was going to think Ryan wasn't in love with her forever, which is apparently what she had told all the other guests. She cried, yelled, and eventually ran off to be comforted by her bridesmaids. I was left standing there confused and a little humiliated. After the wedding, my parents called me. They said I had been selfish, that Emily had trusted me, and that I should have just gone along with it to keep the peace. My friends who were at the wedding have texted me too, some agreeing with Emily, some saying they thought she was overreacting. The worst part is that Emily isn't speaking to me now. She has blocked me on social media, and I haven't heard a word from her in over a week. I get that weddings are emotional and people want everything perfect, but I feel like what she was asking me to do was unethical. I also feel like being honest is more important than maintaining a perfect image for one day, especially when it involves lying about someone else. On the other hand, she says I humiliated her and that I'm selfish because I didn't just go along with it. I can't tell if I really overstepped or if she's being unreasonable. So, Reddit. AITA here for refusing to lie for my sister on her wedding day. Should I have just gone along with her story to keep the peace? Or was I right to stick to the truth, even if it upset her? Character count, 6,423 if you want. I can also draft a slightly longer, even more dramatic version hitting closer to 7,000 characters, with extra twists like in-law drama, guest reactions, and a messy post-wedding fallout. That tends to perform even better in Reddit-style storytelling. Do you want me to do that next? AITA for refusing to attend my cousin's wedding because of how they treated my partner? I, 30F, have been with my partner, Jordan, 32M, for about 5 years. We live together, share expenses, and generally have a strong relationship. Our families have always gotten along well, and I consider Jordan a part of my extended family. That said, we have very different personalities. Jordan is introverted, careful, and values respect and boundaries, while my family is loud, opinionated, and sometimes inconsiderate without meaning to be. A few weeks ago, I was invited to my cousin Rachel's wedding. Rachel and I grew up together, and I was genuinely excited for her. The invitation was clear that it was an adults-only event and included both me and Jordan. Initially, I had no issues and even offered to help with small wedding planning tasks like addressing invitations or helping choose decorations. I thought this would be a nice way to contribute without being intrusive. The problem began a week before the wedding. Rachel called me to discuss the seating chart and casually mentioned that she hadn't included Jordan's name on the seating chart because she assumed he wouldn't get along with anyone. I was taken aback and asked why she assumed that, and she said it was because he's quiet and doesn't really socialize well. I explained that Jordan is friendly and polite and that excluding him felt disrespectful. She brushed it off and said it wouldn't matter because he could sit at a corner table and nobody would mind. I tried to let it go and said we would just attend and enjoy ourselves, but then things escalated. The day before the wedding, Rachel texted me that she had added Jordan to a table with distant relatives she didn't think he would know and that he might feel awkward. She suggested he sit quietly and not try to talk to anyone. I found this incredibly insulting. Not only was she making assumptions about him, but she was also dictating how he should behave in his own way, essentially putting him on display for her amusement. I told her I was uncomfortable with this. I reminded her that Jordan is my partner and deserves the same respect and welcome as I would. She replied, "It's just a wedding, don't be so sensitive. He'll survive one table, and we can't make everything perfect for everyone." I explained that it's not about perfection. It's about dignity and respect. I suggested she adjust the seating or at least acknowledge him as a guest like any other. She said that the seating chart was final and that I should get over it if we want to come. I was furious. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that attending under these conditions would be humiliating for Jordan and uncomfortable for me. I spoke with him, and he was upset but calm. He said he didn't want to cause drama, but he also didn't feel respected or welcomed. We discussed alternatives like attending briefly for the ceremony or sending a gift without going, but ultimately, we decided that attending would feel like we were accepting disrespect. I sent Rachel a message explaining why we would not be attending. I emphasized that it wasn't about ruining her day, but about standing up for our dignity and boundaries. I offered to celebrate with her after the wedding or meet for lunch at a later date, but I made it clear that we would not attend while being treated disrespectfully. The reaction was immediate and intense. Rachel accused me of being controlling, dramatic, and selfish. She told mutual family members that I was refusing to attend because I couldn't handle a single awkward table and that I was making the wedding about myself. Several family members reached out, asking me to reconsider, saying I was being unreasonable and that weddings are stressful and nobody should be offended by minor things. My parents are upset too, saying I'm overreacting and that I'm creating unnecessary tension in the family. I feel torn because I genuinely want to support Rachel and I don't want to hurt family relationships. But I also feel strongly that attending under these conditions would validate her behavior and send a message that it's acceptable to treat my partner disrespectfully. I've helped family in countless ways over the years, and this feels like a situation where standing my ground is necessary. Some friends I've talked to say I'm justified, that boundaries are important and that attending would only reinforce poor behavior. Others say I'm overreacting and should just go to avoid drama, even if it's uncomfortable for us. I feel anxious and sad about the situation because family events are supposed to be happy, but this conflict has made me question how much I should sacrifice to avoid upsetting others. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to attend my cousin's wedding because of how they treated my partner. AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé move in with me, even though he has nowhere else to go. I, 32F, have lived in my apartment for about 5 years now. I worked really hard to get it. It's a small one-bedroom, but it's mine. I live in a decent neighborhood. The rent is manageable, and I like having my own space. I also have 2 cats who are my little family, and I like to keep my home quiet and organized. My sister, Jess, 28F, has been dating her fiancé, Tom, 30M, for about 3 years. Jess and Tom have had their share of issues, mostly related to finances and living situations. They've been moving in and out of different apartments, often arguing about rent, bills, and responsibilities. Tom has a history of being a bit unreliable. He's at jobs that don't last, and he sometimes disappears for days without telling anyone, though Jess insists he's trying to improve. A few months ago, Jess told me that Tom had been kicked out of his latest apartment. Apparently, he didn't pay rent for a few months, and the landlord had finally had enough. Jess said he had nowhere to go and asked if he could temporarily stay with me until he got back on his feet. I told her that my apartment was too small for another adult, especially with 2 cats, and that I liked having my own space. I also mentioned that I wasn't comfortable having someone who I barely knew living with me, especially because I valued my routines and quiet time. Jess seemed disappointed, but didn't push it at the time. A few weeks later, she brought it up again. This time, she said it would only be for a month, and she promised Tom would pay a small portion of the rent and help around the house. I explained that even a month would be stressful for me, that I had my own work-from-home schedule, and that I needed my apartment to feel like a sanctuary. She argued that Tom had no one else, and that it was just 1 month, and he's family now too. I repeated my stance, but the conversation ended with her storming off, saying I was selfish and heartless. A few days later, Jess and Tom came to my apartment unannounced. Tom seemed nervous but polite, and Jess tried to make it seem casual. She asked again if he could stay, just for a few weeks. I firmly said no. I explained that I couldn't have him living with me, and that I had already told them my reasons. Jess got upset and started crying, saying that I was ruining her life and Tom's life, and that I was being cruel. Tom stayed quiet the entire time. Eventually, they left, and I didn't hear from them for a few days. After that, Jess started messaging me almost daily, guilt-tripping me about Tom. She said things like, "You wouldn't let me help my fiancé," and I guess you don't care about family. She also started posting subtle things on social media about how some people only care about themselves and some family members never help when it counts. I tried to stay calm and not respond emotionally, but it started to wear on me. Then things escalated. One night, I got a call from Tom. He said he was at a friend's place, but wanted to clear the air. He asked if I could meet him at a cafe to talk. I was hesitant, but I agreed. When we met, he seemed genuinely apologetic for putting me in a difficult position. He admitted that he had messed up financially and that he didn't expect me to take him in. He said he understood my point of view and that he hoped I wouldn't hate him. I thanked him for understanding and told him I appreciated that he took responsibility. After that, I thought things would settle down, but they didn't. Jess has been increasingly passive-aggressive and, frankly, manipulative. She started sending me long messages about how Tom feels abandoned and family should stick together, implying that I'm a bad sister. She even mentioned that she might have to break off the engagement if Tom doesn't have somewhere to stay. I pointed out that her relationship problems weren't my responsibility and that I had already done what I could by listening and being supportive emotionally, but she said that wasn't enough. To make things worse, some of our mutual friends started asking me why I was being so harsh and letting your sister down. A few even suggested I should just let him crash for a bit to avoid drama. I explained my reasoning each time, but it seems like people are slowly siding with Jess and Tom. Recently, Jess's tone has gotten even more hostile. She accused me of hating her happiness, and not being a real sister because I won't let Tom live with me. I try to have a calm conversation, pointing out that I'm setting healthy boundaries and that my home is my personal space. She said that's a terrible excuse and that I was choosing my cats over family. I feel trapped between wanting to maintain my boundaries and wanting to preserve my relationship with my sister. I love Jess, but her constant guilt-tripping and Tom's reliance on her make me feel like I'm being unfairly vilified for prioritizing my own well-being. I've offered to help in other ways, like looking for short-term sublets or helping Tom search for a job, but Jess keeps insisting that nothing else matters except letting him live with me. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé move in with me, even though he has nowhere else to go. I feel like I'm being responsible and reasonable, but my sister sees it as betrayal, and I'm not sure if I'm overreacting. Character count, 6,354 if you want. I can draft a second version with slightly more dramatic tension and a more detailed fallout, similar to the stories that reach r/Amethyst Hole top posts. Do you want me to do that? AITA for refusing to let my mom control the theme and guest list of my wedding, even though she's threatening to not attend. I, 27F, have been planning my wedding with my fiancé, Mark, 29M, for about a year now. Mark and I are both very hands-on people, and we've tried to make the planning process something that reflects us as a couple, not just our families. That said, my mom, Linda, has always been very involved in every family event, and she tends to overstep boundaries without realizing it. She genuinely wants to help, but her idea of help often ends up turning into her making unilateral decisions. About 6 months ago, we started booking vendors, picking a venue, and deciding on a theme. Mark and I agreed on a simple, semi-formal outdoor wedding with a mix of neutral and pastel colors. We wanted it to feel intimate and personal with about 120 guests. We made it clear from the beginning that this wedding was about us, and while we wanted family input, the final decisions would be ours. This past month, my mom started pressuring me about the theme. She sent me multiple Pinterest boards, insisted that the colors were all wrong, and started suggesting that we have a live band instead of the DJ we already booked. She also began making comments about the decor, saying things like, "A wedding isn't a wedding unless it looks exactly like this," or "You need to consider tradition. It's what people expect." I tried to politely thank her for her ideas while explaining that we wanted a theme that felt personal to us. She brushed it off, saying that I was being stubborn and that she just wanted me to have a beautiful wedding that people will remember. The bigger conflict started with the guest list. Originally, we agreed to invite only close family and friends, keeping it under 120 people. About 2 weeks ago, my mom sent me a text demanding that I invite a list of extended relatives she wanted there. These are people I barely know, and I had already discussed with Mark that we didn't want to include them because it would push the total guest count over our limit and make the venue feel crowded. I explained that we couldn't accommodate additional guests and that we wanted the wedding to reflect the people closest to us. She responded angrily, saying that if we didn't include them, she wouldn't attend the wedding at all. She accused me of being selfish and ungrateful and said that I was ignoring the family. I reminded her that she could attend regardless of the guest list and that our decision wasn't meant to exclude her. It was about the space and the people we truly wanted there. She called me cold and disrespectful and sent a long email listing ways I was failing as a daughter by not letting her make these decisions. I've tried to compromise in small ways, like incorporating a few of her decor ideas, letting her pick a few flowers, and allowing her to give a speech. But she keeps pushing for complete control, including insisting that we change the color palette entirely to something she prefers and that we add dozens of additional guests. I've explained that if we give in to these demands, it would completely change the wedding we want and cause additional costs that we didn't budget for. She said that if money is the problem, I should just take out a loan or do whatever it takes to make her happy. Mark is fully supportive of my stance, and he thinks my mom is overstepping. He reminded me that weddings are stressful and families often have strong opinions, but that it's ultimately our day and our decisions. Even so, I feel guilty because my mom is threatening not to attend and our parents are split on the issue. My dad says we should stick to our guns and make it about us, while my mom has been calling him multiple times a day, trying to pressure him into convincing me to give in for family harmony. A few friends I've spoken to say I'm in the right, that it's normal for parents to have opinions, but not to dictate the wedding. Others say I'm being too rigid and should compromise to avoid family conflict, especially since it's a major life event and my mom's feelings are involved. I'm torn because I genuinely want her to be there and enjoy the day, but I also don't want to sacrifice our vision and budget just to appease her. The last straw came yesterday when she texted me that she had already told extended family members that they would be invited and that if they couldn't come, it was on me for not listening. I replied that the wedding is about Mark and me, our budget, and the space constraints, and that we couldn't accommodate her additions. She then said she wouldn't be attending, which left me feeling sad, frustrated, and conflicted. I'm trying to find a balance between respecting my mom's feelings and protecting our wedding plans. I feel like I've compromised in ways that are meaningful without giving up control entirely, but she keeps pushing and framing it as me being disrespectful. I genuinely want her to be part of the day, but I also don't want to feel like the wedding is her event instead of ours. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my mom control the theme and guest list of my wedding, even though she's threatening not to attend. Character count, 6,473. Hey friends, if you're enjoying the content, don't forget to hit the like button and share your thoughts in the comments. We genuinely want to know what you enjoy and what we can improve. What did you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future uploads? Your feedback helps us get better every day. Thanks for sticking with us. AITA for refusing to let my sister's wedding ruin my entire life over a seating arrangement. This is a long one, so bear with me. I, 29F, have always been the responsible sibling. I'm organized, I plan ahead, and I tend to be very careful about logistics, especially when it comes to big family events. My younger sister, Emily, 26F, has always been more spontaneous, to say the least. She's sweet, fun, but utterly incapable of managing anything that requires planning beyond a week in advance. She's the kind of person who will decide to have a huge party on a whim and then ask everyone else to figure out the details. That's not a dig. It's just how she is, and for most of our lives, I've adapted by stepping in. Emily got engaged about a year ago, and as soon as the announcement was made, she insisted I help with the wedding. Naturally, I agreed because, well, she's my sister, and I love her. I assumed she'd want help with the usual stuff, logistics, budgets, timelines, coordinating vendors, etc. That's usually my jam. But what I didn't expect was how much her version of help would clash with my sense of order. Fast forward to about 2 months ago, Emily had finalized the guest list. I don't have the exact numbers offhand, but it was somewhere around 150 people. She had this vision of everyone mingling freely at the reception and seemed very against the idea of assigned seating. I tried to reason with her. I explained that for a group that size, some structure is necessary to avoid chaos, especially since we had multiple generations, a few feuding family members, and a handful of her friends who are notoriously dramatic. I suggested a compromise. Maybe we do assign tables, but not assign seats at each table. She was adamant that this would ruin the vibe she wanted. I decided to let it go, thinking that the venue staff could handle minor issues. The week before the wedding, I got a call from the venue manager. They were concerned because Emily had not provided seating plan, and with some guests having dietary restrictions, they needed at least a rough idea of who would sit where. I forwarded Emily the message, but she insisted we didn't need one and that she would handle it on the day. I felt uneasy, but again, I didn't want to start a fight, so I let it slide. Wedding day arrived, and I had a role as day of coordinator because Emily begged me. I was basically responsible for making sure everything ran smoothly. At first, it was fine. The ceremony went off without a hitch. The reception started, and within the first 10 minutes, chaos unfolded. Some tables were empty while others were overcrowded. Cousins who don't get along were seated together, and a few elderly relatives were stuck in the far corner, making it difficult for them to get food or interact with others. One of the servers accidentally mixed up meals for 2 tables, and people started complaining. I tried to fix things on the fly, moving people around, but I quickly realized I was fighting a losing battle. Here's where it got worse. Emily had asked me to give a toast, which I was nervous about but agreed to do. I tried to make it lighthearted and positive, but mid-toast, a fight broke out at one of the tables over a seating misunderstanding. It escalated quickly, yelling, accusations, someone even threatened to leave, and everyone started looking at me because apparently I was the one who planned the seating chaos. I tried to calm everyone down, but it was like putting out a fire with a water pistol. My toast ended up being awkward. The fight overshadowed everything, and I felt completely humiliated. Later that night, Emily cornered me in the hallway. She was crying, and I felt bad for her because I know she wanted this to be perfect. But then she said something that really got under my skin. If you had just done what I asked and not tried to plan everything, this wouldn't have happened. You ruined my wedding. I was shocked. I tried to explain that I hadn't tried to plan anything. The seating wasn't even assigned, and I was literally trying to prevent the chaos, but she didn't want to hear it. According to her, my very presence was controlling and intrusive. Things have been tense ever since. Family members are divided. Some think I should have just let the chaos happen to respect Emily's wishes. Others are sympathetic and say I tried to save the situation. Emily hasn't spoken to me directly since the wedding. I sent her a message trying to explain my perspective, but she replied that she doesn't want to reopen that night and implied that I should just accept being blamed. I feel like I'm stuck. On one hand, I did my best to help my sister, trying to prevent disaster. On the other hand, it's her wedding, and she has a vision that apparently I disrupted. But here's the kicker. It was not a question of control. I was literally trying to help with the very thing she refused to plan. I've been replaying every moment in my head, wondering if there was something more I could have done to prevent the chaos. But honestly, I feel like nothing short of a full seating chart enforced by the venue would have avoided it. AITA for not letting my sister's insistence on free seating ruin my attempt to keep the reception from falling apart, even though she blames me for the chaos that ensued. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she demanded I change my lifestyle for it. So, this is going to be long, but I need an objective perspective. I, 28F, have always been a pretty independent person. I moved across the country for work about 5 years ago and built a life for myself that I'm genuinely happy with. I have a small circle of close friends, a job I enjoy, and a lifestyle that suits me. Basically, I live in a way that makes me comfortable and healthy. My sister, Emily, 32F, has a very different life. She's married, has 2 kids, and lives in our hometown with our parents nearby. We've always had a bit of a tense relationship, but it's never been unbearable. Recently, Emily got engaged again, this time to a guy she's been dating for about a year, and immediately started planning her wedding. She's always been the type to want things perfect and has a strong vision for everything. I knew this going in, so I wasn't surprised when she called me about my involvement in the wedding. What did surprise me was the request. She wanted me to completely change my appearance and lifestyle for her wedding. She started with my diet. She said that because she's dreamed of photos with her sisters looking a certain way, I needed to follow a strict diet and lose at least 15 pounds before the wedding. I've never had an eating disorder, but I have a healthy body image and a lifestyle I maintain for myself, not to fit anyone else's ideals. I tried to explain this to her, and she got visibly upset, saying that I was being selfish and that her wedding is the one day she gets to feel perfect and that I should be willing to make sacrifices for her happiness. Next came clothing. She had picked out bridesmaid dresses for me without even asking my size or my style. When I hesitated, she accused me of not supporting her and said she would personally pick something that would look best, regardless of my input. When I saw the dress she had in mind, I immediately knew I would feel uncomfortable wearing it. It was tight, synthetic, and frankly not my style at all. I explained that while I wanted to celebrate her day, I wouldn't feel comfortable in that outfit. She told me I was making it about myself, and that it was disrespectful to her big day. It didn't stop there. She also wanted me to spend a weekend at a wellness retreat that she had booked for all the bridesmaids, claiming it was essential bonding time. I work in tech, and my schedule is unpredictable. Plus, I had already made travel plans to be closer to my family for the holidays. I told her I couldn't take extra time off for this, and she guilt-tripped me heavily, saying that my absence would ruin the whole experience for the group and that I wasn't committed to being a sister. After weeks of back and forth, I realized that everything she wanted from me was basically a complete lifestyle overhaul for one event. I am healthy and happy in my life as it is, and I felt extremely pressured to sacrifice my comfort and self-respect to meet her vision. I told her that I would not be able to attend the wedding unless she respected my choices regarding my body, my clothes, and my time. She reacted by calling me selfish, accusing me of trying to ruin her big day, and telling me that I obviously didn't care about her happiness. Our parents got involved and asked me to reconsider, saying that families should put differences aside for such an important day. I explained my reasoning calmly, but my parents said that I was being stubborn and that Emily has always been the sensitive one. Ultimately, I decided not to attend. I wrote Emily a long message explaining that I loved her, I supported her, and I wanted her to have a beautiful wedding, but I couldn't compromise my values or my well-being for a single day. I said I would celebrate with her in other ways and that I hoped she could understand. The fallout has been significant. Emily blocked me on social media and won't answer my calls. Our parents have been very disappointed, and some extended family members are calling me unreasonable. On the other hand, a few friends have told me that I did the right thing by setting boundaries, but it's hard not to feel guilty when my sister is so hurt. I understand that weddings are a big deal, and I wanted to be there for her, but I can't change who I am to fit someone else's vision. I also can't help but feel that her demands were extreme, manipulative, and unfair. I'm conflicted because while I feel justified in my decision, I keep wondering if I am actually the bad person here for walking away from a family event. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she demanded I change my lifestyle for it. Character count, 6,438 if you want. I can draft another version that's slightly more dramatic and emotionally charged, which tends to do really well on Reddit. Do you want me to do that next? AITA for refusing to attend my brother's wedding because of his fiance's family. I, 29M, have always been close to my brother, Dan, 33M. We grew up in a very tight-knit family, and even though we had our usual sibling fights, we were generally supportive of each other. Recently, Dan got engaged to a woman named Melissa, and at first, I was genuinely happy for him. Melissa seemed nice from the brief interactions we had, but the closer I got to the planning, the more uneasy I felt about the dynamic between my brother and his future in-laws. Here's some context. Dan and Melissa are having a fairly traditional wedding. The guest list includes extended family and friends from both sides. While Melissa's side is polite in general, there have been several instances that raised red flags for me. The first was her father, Rick. He is extremely overbearing and controlling, not just to Melissa, but seemingly to anyone who crosses his path. At the engagement party, he cornered me in the kitchen to interrogate me about my career, income, and why I hadn't settled down yet. He made a point of comparing me to Melissa's cousin, who apparently owns 3 properties before age 30. It was uncomfortable, but I brushed it off, thinking it was just him being awkward. Things escalated when my sister-in-law, Karen, started sending out what she called advisory notes to everyone attending the wedding. There were long emails outlining how to behave, dress, and even what to say during interactions with her family. At first, it was just a little annoying, but the more I read them, the more absurd they became. They included things like, do not bring up controversial topics like politics or religion, even if asked, and avoid giving gifts that are not approved by us to prevent offense. It felt like walking on eggshells, but I still considered attending. The final straw came during a family dinner hosted by Melissa's parents. I had been seated next to Rick again, and the conversation quickly turned to his idea of family legacy and proper conduct at social gatherings. He spent nearly the entire evening telling me that my lifestyle choices, my job as a freelance designer, living alone, and not owning a home, were irresponsible and a burden to the family. He made comments about how Dan must have been settling for less, marrying someone like me, and that Melissa's parents expected Dan to marry someone of equivalent status. I tried to stay polite, but I felt like I was being demeaned in my own family. After that, I spoke to Dan privately about my concerns. I told him I felt uncomfortable around his fiancée's family and that I didn't want to attend the wedding if it meant interacting with them under those conditions. Dunn was furious. He accused me of being jealous, controlling, and not supportive. He reminded me that this day was about him and Melissa, not me, and that by refusing to attend, I was risking our relationship. I explained that my issue wasn't with him or Melissa personally, but with how her parents treated me. I also told him that I didn't want to cause a scene at the wedding by showing visible discomfort or clashing with his family. Dan then tried to negotiate. He suggested I attend but stay mostly quiet, avoid Rick, and just smile and nod. I pointed out that this wouldn't fix the underlying problem. I would still feel disrespected and anxious the entire time. He became more aggressive, saying that families often have to compromise and that my oversensitivity was unreasonable. Our conversation ended with him yelling that if I truly cared about him, I would put my feelings aside. I reached out to a few other relatives for advice. My parents were sympathetic, understanding why I wouldn't want to attend, but they were also worried about Dan's reaction. My mother said that family weddings are important, and that sometimes it's better to grin and bear it. My father said he would understand if I stayed home, but urged me to think carefully about the long-term impact on my relationship with Dan. After several days of consideration, I made my decision. I sent Dan a message saying that I wouldn't be attending the wedding because I could not, in good conscience, put myself in an environment where I felt consistently belittled and unwelcome. I emphasized that this was not about him or Melissa, but about my well-being. Dan hasn't spoken to me since I sent the message. I've received texts from Melissa accusing me of being dramatic and selfish, and from Rick calling me an embarrassment to the family. My parents are caught in the middle, try to mediate, but my brother seems to have made up his mind to cut me off at least temporarily. I feel sad about the situation because I genuinely love my brother and don't want this to destroy our relationship, but I also feel that attending the wedding would have been emotionally harmful. I know weddings are sensitive events and that people want family support, but I also feel like there has to be a limit to what someone should tolerate just to avoid conflict. I keep thinking about whether I overreacted or if I'm justified in prioritizing my mental health over attending what is traditionally a family celebration. So Reddit, am I the asshole for refusing to attend my brother's wedding because of his fiancée's family? Character count, 6,211. This keeps the structure, drama, and moral ambiguity that tend to make AITA stories popular. If you want, I can write another one that's even longer and has multiple layers of conflict, which often does very well on Reddit. Do you want me to do that? AITA for refusing to let my younger brother's fiancée take over my mother's funeral arrangements, even though everyone else thinks I'm being unreasonable. I, 32F, recently lost my mother after a long battle with cancer. She was a very private person, extremely particular about her wishes, and honestly, even in her last days, she was very clear about wanting her family to handle her funeral arrangements without external interference. My younger brother, Jason, 28M, has been in a relationship with his fiancée, Lila, 27F, for about 3 years. While they've been together for a while, I've never been particularly close to Lila. I always found her somewhat controlling and overbearing, but I tried to be civil for Jason's sake. When my mom passed away, I immediately started making calls to organize her funeral. My mom had specific instructions from the type of flowers she liked to the music she wanted played. I also had a lot of personal mementos and letters that my mom wanted distributed to certain family members and close friends. My goal was to honor her wishes as closely as possible. The problem started when Lila got involved. The day after my mother passed, she texted Jason and me with a funeral planning guide she had found online. At first, I thought it was harmless advice, but she quickly started giving very specific opinions about what should and shouldn't be done. She suggested changing the flower arrangements, replacing the music selections, and even altering the order of the service. I politely told her that my mom had very specific wishes and that I intended to follow them. Jason, however, seemed to think this was a reasonable time for Lila to help. It escalated when Lila insisted on meeting with the funeral home director to make some improvements. I told her directly that this was not her decision to make, and that all arrangements were being handled by me. She argued that she was just trying to help, and that it would make the service more elegant and sophisticated. I tried to remain calm and explained that my mother wanted a simple, personal service, not a show. At this point, Jason told me I was being too controlling and that Lila should at least be allowed to have a say. I stood firm. My mother's wishes were not open to debate, and I couldn't let someone who had never met my mom dictate her final farewell. Lila reacted very negatively and started sending passive-aggressive messages to the family chat, saying things like, "I just want your mom to have the beautiful send-off she deserves, unlike what some people might choose." I ignored most of them, but my brother confronted me later, asking why I couldn't compromise and allow Lila to participate. The day of the funeral, Lila made a scene. She showed up early, attempted to move flowers around, and even tried to switch the order of speakers. I politely stopped her each time, and eventually, the funeral director had to intervene to remind her that the arrangements were already finalized. By the end of the day, she left angrily, muttering about how family drama ruins everything. Jason was quiet, but seemed upset with me for not letting her be part of the process. After the funeral, my extended family started commenting on how rude I was to Lila. Some even said I should have let her help, as she was part of the family now. I explained that my mother had explicitly wanted certain things, but they said I was being inflexible and that I should have considered Jason and Lila's feelings. My friends mostly supported me, saying it was my mother's funeral and that it was inappropriate for someone who wasn't closely involved with my mom to try to take control. Now, my brother is giving me the cold shoulder, and Lila has been posting subtle digs on social media about me not valuing family input. I honestly feel like I did the right thing. My mom's wishes came first, and I don't regret sticking to them. But my extended family is making me doubt myself. AITA for refusing to let my brother's fiancée take over the funeral arrangements, even though it caused tension with both him and the rest of the family. Some additional context. My mom had explicitly asked for no extravagant decorations and only wanted immediate family involved in the planning. She mentioned several times that she didn't want outsiders influencing her funeral, particularly new romantic partners in the family. I try to follow this to the letter, but now I'm feeling guilty because everyone else thinks I overreacted. I'm also worried that this will permanently damage my relationship with my brother. I've tried talking to him calmly, explaining that it wasn't personal against Lila, but he keeps saying I should have been nicer and let her feel included. Honestly, including her would have violated my mom's wishes, and I can't bring myself to apologize for honoring them. ITA here. Character count, 6,457 if you want. I can write a second story in a completely different scenario with the same popular Reddit style, so you'll have options for comparison. Do you want me to do that? AITA for refusing to give my sister money to pay off her boyfriend after he got arrested, even though my family thinks I should. I, 33F, have a younger sister, Emily, who is 30. Growing up, Emily and I were close, but over the last several years, our relationship has been strained. She tends to make impulsive decisions, often involving money or relationships, and my parents and I have had to intervene multiple times. I consider myself responsible with money and careful about boundaries, whereas Emily is more reckless and expects others to help clean up her messes. About 6 months ago, Emily started dating a guy named Ryan. At first, he seemed okay, but I quickly noticed that he has a history of minor criminal incidents and a reckless attitude. I voiced my concerns to Emily a few times, but she insisted that he was trustworthy and that I was overreacting. I try to support her without getting too involved because she is an adult and can make her own decisions, even if I disagree. Last weekend, I got a call from my parents saying that Ryan had been arrested for a DUI after crashing his car. Emily was panicking and called me crying, asking if I could lend her several $1,000s to pay for Ryan's bail and the lawyer. I was immediately uncomfortable for several reasons. First, Ryan is not my responsibility. He is an adult who made a serious mistake. Second, Emily has a history of asking for money to solve her boyfriend's problems, and this has caused tension before. Third, Lending money in this situation could create legal or financial complications for me. I told Emily that I could not give her the money. I suggested alternatives, calling legal aid, asking Ryan's family if they could contribute, using payment plans if the court allows, or even contacting a lawyer for a consultation to see if there were lower-cost options. Emily got extremely upset and accused me of not loving her and letting her fail. She said it was an emergency and that I was being cruel and selfish. I tried to explain that I was happy to help in other ways, emotional support, helping research lawyers, or coordinating with her parents, but that lending the money was beyond my comfort level. My parents got involved and have been pressuring me. They argue that it's my responsibility as Emily's older sister to help her in a crisis, and that refusing to give money is cold and unsisterly. They also say that Emily wouldn't ask if it weren't urgent, and that I should just bite the bullet and help her out this one time. I understand their perspective, but I also feel that bending to this request would set a dangerous precedent. Emily has asked for money for other boyfriends before, and I've always tried to help moderately without enabling bad behavior. This request feels extreme, especially given the legal and financial risk involved. Some of my friends have told me I'm justified in setting boundaries and that I am not responsible for my sister's boyfriend. Others say that families should help each other in emergencies, and that refusing could permanently damage my relationship with Emily. I'm genuinely torn. I love my sister, and I want her to be okay, but I also know that giving her the money could lead to more reckless behavior and resentment if things go wrong. Emily has started sending me messages constantly, alternating between guilt-tripping, pleading, and even accusing me of choosing Ryan over her. She has also told mutual friends that I refuse to help in a crisis, and I'm starting to feel like the family is turning against me. I'm trying to stay calm, but every message makes me feel anxious and stressed. I've considered offering a smaller sum as a compromise, but I'm worried that even that could be interpreted as validation that I will always step in financially, which I don't want. I also worry about legal liability. If I gave her the money and Ryan used it inappropriately, or if something went wrong with bail payments, I could be implicated in some way. I've researched this, and while I wouldn't be breaking the law, there's still potential for complications, especially if the money is large. Mark, my partner, is supportive of my decision. He says that helping in other ways is fine, but financially bailing someone out who isn't even my responsibility crosses a line. Emily's behavior has also caused tension between him and me because he feels that I shouldn't be forced to compromise my financial stability to fix her mistakes. The situation has become increasingly stressful, and I feel like I'm being painted as the villain. I've offered every type of support I can think of: logistical help, emotional support, researching options. But my refusal to hand over the money is being treated as betrayal. I don't want to lose my relationship with Emily over this, but I also feel that giving in would reinforce a pattern of dependency and poor decision-making. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to give my sister money to pay for her boyfriend's bail after he got arrested, even though my family thinks I should. Character count, 6,385. AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé stay at my house after an argument over his joke about my disability. I, 32F, have a pretty visible disability. I use a wheelchair full-time due to a spinal injury I had about 10 years ago. I've learned over the years how to navigate life with it, and I've built a home that's fully accessible for me. I also have a very close relationship with my younger sister, Emily, 28F, and for the most part, our dynamic has been supportive. That said, Emily has a very different sense of humor than I do, and her fiancé, Dan, 30M, has an even worse one. Emily and I have always lived in different cities, but we see each other every few months. A few weeks ago, she asked if Dan could stay at my place for a long weekend when they were visiting my city for a family event. I said yes, assuming it would be no problem. I didn't know much about Dan, and Emily assured me he was super easygoing. I've always tried to be welcoming and accommodating, even for guests I didn't know well. The problem started almost immediately after they arrived. The first night, while we were having dinner, Dan made a comment that caught me completely off guard. I had just served mashed potatoes, and he said, "Careful, don't spill those on your lap. Wouldn't want a chair to tip over." At first, I thought maybe I misheard him or that he was joking awkwardly, but then he laughed and nudged Emily. I froze. I didn't know how to respond, so I tried to brush it off and continued eating. Emily laughed uncomfortably and told him, "Oh, come on, it's just a joke." I wanted to believe that it was an isolated incident, but over the next 48 hours, it didn't stop. He made comments like, "Watch out for that step. Wouldn't want to see you eating carpet tonight. And you sure you can reach that? I mean, wheelchair problems and all." At first, I tried politely redirecting the conversation, but Emily kept dismissing my concerns, saying, "He's just teasing, you know he likes you." By the second day, I was getting genuinely upset. I had a busy schedule, some work I needed to do from home, and they were constantly making comments that made me feel like a caricature rather than a guest in my own home. I eventually told Emily in private that I didn't appreciate Dan's remarks and that it was hurtful, not funny. I expected her to back me up, but she said, "He didn't mean anything by it. You're too sensitive." That was the breaking point for me. That evening, I sat down with both of them and said that if Dan continued making those kinds of jokes, I would ask him to leave. I tried to frame it politely and explain that I wasn't comfortable being around that kind of humor. Dan's reaction was immediate. He laughed in a way that felt almost mocking and said, "Wow, really? All of this over a few jokes? Lighten up, it's just a chair." Emily didn't say anything, which hurt more than the joke itself. The next morning, after a particularly long night of him making comments while I was working at my desk, I told Emily I couldn't host them anymore and asked them to find another place to stay. Emily was furious. She accused me of being rude, overreacting, and spoiling her weekend. She said that I was taking her engagement too seriously and that I should learn to laugh at myself. I tried explaining that my disability isn't something to joke about and that I have a right to feel safe and respected in my own home, but she wouldn't listen. They ended up leaving early, and since then, Emily has barely spoken to me. Family members who were at the event have reached out saying I was too harsh and should have just ignored it for a weekend, but a few close friends have said I was completely justified. I feel hurt and betrayed by both Emily and Dan. I don't think I was asking for anything unreasonable, just respect in my own home, but now I feel like I've lost my sister's trust and approval. I keep wondering if I should have just tolerated the jokes and let it slide, but every time I think about it, I get frustrated at the idea of letting someone treat me like that. So, Reddit, am I the asshole for refusing to let my sister's fiancé stay at my house after he repeatedly made jokes about my disability, even though it caused a huge fight with my sister? Or was I right to stand my ground, even if it damaged my relationship with her? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé's behavior? I, 28F, have always been close with my family, especially my younger sister, Mia, 25F. Growing up, we had our usual sibling squabbles, but overall, we've been supportive of each other. Our parents have always emphasized family unity, and I've carried that into adulthood. So when Mia started dating Alex, 27M, about 2 years ago, I was cautiously optimistic. From the beginning, though, something about him rubbed me the wrong way, but I tried to keep an open mind and told myself it was probably just me being overly critical. Over the past 2 years, my concerns about Alex have only grown. He has this habit of making jokes at other people's expense, and not the playful kind. For example, at family gatherings, he would mock my parents' quirks or make sly comment about my friends, and while Mia would laugh it off, I found it incredibly rude. I tried addressing it once, subtly pointing out that joking about my dad's anxiety disorder was not okay. Alex laughed and said I was too sensitive, and Mia rolled her eyes at me, saying I was overreacting. The biggest issues, though, started happening closer to the wedding. Mia got engaged about 6 months ago, and from the beginning, Alex insisted that I was too critical and that I should lighten up. I kept my feelings mostly to myself, wanting to support Mia on what is supposed to be one of the happiest times of her life. But Alex's behavior escalated in ways that directly affected me and my family. For example, when discussing wedding seating arrangements, he demanded that certain distant relatives I had invited not be included, even though they were very close to me and my parents. He accused me of trying to make it all about my side of the family, even though I was just trying to ensure people who had been important in Mia's life could attend. When I stood my ground, he called me dramatic and controlling in front of Mia, which humiliated me. Mia tried to mediate, but mostly just sided with Alex, telling me to stop making waves. Then came the bachelor/bachelorette parties. Mia told me she wanted me to plan her bachelorette, which I was excited about, but she insisted Alex should be heavily involved. When I tried to include his input, he dismissed my suggestions outright and started making snide comments about my planning abilities in front of the rest of the bridal party. I tried to brush it off, but it became a recurring pattern. Every time I had an opinion, Alex would belittle me. I even had one friend pull me aside, saying, "I don't think he realizes how rude he's being, and it's getting worse every time you interact with him." The final straw came about 2 weeks ago. We were at a small dinner with both families to discuss last-minute wedding logistics. Alex cornered me and started questioning why I wasn't contributing more financially to the wedding. I pointed out that I was already helping with the bachelorette party, the bridesmaid dress fittings, and was hosting a pre-wedding brunch at my apartment. He scoffed and said, "So basically, you're not doing enough because you're cheap." I was stunned. Mia just laughed nervously and changed the subject, which felt like she was defending him rather than me. After that incident, I realized I could not, in good conscience, attend the wedding. I emailed Mia a long, heartfelt message explaining my reasons. I told her I loved her, that I wanted her to have a beautiful wedding, but I could not support Alex after the repeated humiliation and disrespect I had endured. I offered to help in non-interactive ways, like contributing to decorations or sending a gift, but I made it clear that I would not be present. Mia's reaction was intense. She called me multiple times, crying and yelling, saying I was throwing away our family over a misunderstanding and that I was choosing Alex over her. My parents are upset with me too. They told me I was letting a minor disagreement ruin years of family bonds and that I should forgive and forget for the sake of family peace. My friends are split. Some say I'm right to protect myself, while others think I'm overreacting and that weddings are about compromise. I'm torn. I feel like if I go to the wedding, I will be subjected to humiliation again, and it will overshadow what should be a joyful occasion for my sister. On the other hand, I worry I'm making the situation about myself and potentially damaging my relationship with Mia permanently. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé's behavior? AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé live in my house for a trial period despite her insistence that it would solve all our family tensions. So a little background. I, 32F, have been living in my late parents' house since they passed away about 5 years ago. I inherited it, and it's not a massive mansion or anything, but it's got sentimental value, and I like having my own space. My younger sister, Emily, 28F, has been dating her fiancé, Mark, 30M, for about 3 years. They just got engaged earlier this year, and ever since the engagement, Emily has been acting as though we should all immediately adopt the perfect family lifestyle she has in mind. A few months ago, Emily and Mark came to visit me and started talking about how she wanted him to try living with me for a month to see how our families get along. At first, I didn't quite understand what she meant. She explained that because of some past tension between me and Mark, mostly minor disagreements at family gatherings, they thought that a short stay at my house would allow everyone to get used to each other and work out any issues before the wedding. She made it sound casual, like it was just a fun experiment. I told her that I was uncomfortable with the idea. My house is my sanctuary. I work from home, and I value my privacy. Letting a couple, who I barely get along with, move in for a month seemed like a recipe for disaster. Emily didn't take that well. She said I was being selfish and that this was about the family, not me. She claimed that I had always held grudges against Mark for no reason and that living together might finally help me see him differently. I tried to compromise. I offered to host them for a weekend or maybe a week, but not an entire month. Emily said that wasn't enough, and if I cared about her and her future marriage, I would make the month-long stay happen. I told her again that no, I wasn't comfortable with it, and I didn't feel like anyone should be forced to live somewhere they don't want it for such a long period. She got visibly upset and said I was being petty and trying to control the family narrative. After that, things got awkward. She started dropping hints about how difficult I was being at family gatherings, how she might reconsider inviting me to the wedding if I couldn't be more supportive, and how I was letting my pride ruin everyone else's happiness. Mark, to be honest, has always been a bit overbearing in subtle ways. He tends to dominate conversations and dismisses my opinions, which makes me tense around him. I felt that a trial period would just exacerbate those dynamics, not resolve anything. A few weeks ago, Emily's mom and my older cousin, who I'm usually close with, came to me separately and tried to guilt me into agreeing. They said I should put aside my personal feelings for the sake of family unity. I calmly explained that I was not trying to hurt anyone. I just did not feel safe or comfortable having Mark live in my house for a month. They still seemed frustrated and kept implying that I was overreacting. Emily called me crying later that week. She accused me of destroying her dream wedding before it even started and claimed that I was being selfish, unloving, and unreasonable. I told her I loved her, but I couldn't compromise my personal boundaries. She accused me of playing favorites, since I had invited my best friend to stay over for a month once after a breakup. And I said that was different because it was my choice, and I had a relationship of trust with my friend. The conversation ended with Emily saying she wasn't sure she could have a close relationship with me anymore if I refused to let her and Mark live in my house. She hung up. I haven't spoken to her directly since. Family gatherings have been tense ever since. I get side comment from relatives, and Emily's parents have tried to mediate by suggesting maybe I could at least let Mark stay in the guest room for a week. I politely declined. My friends think I'm handling it correctly, but my family is divided. Some think I'm being selfish, while others agree that my boundaries are valid. I understand that weddings and relationships involve compromise, but this request felt extreme. I also worry that giving in would set a precedent that my house and my boundaries are negotiable in a way that I'm not comfortable with. On the other hand, I do feel guilty that I might be straining my relationship with Emily, who is someone I love dearly. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé live in my house for a month despite her insistence that it would help everyone get along. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss new uploads. And feel free to leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean the world to me. See you in the next video.